We've got a bit of a new look for every single role in 26.4 as Riot's been hitting us with some massive patches to start the year, so the meta has been evolving quickly. No worries though, because as always, we've got you guys covered with 3 of the best champions for each role. And remember, if you're learning new tech, broken builds, or macro and wave control strategies from videos like this one, you're already behind. The issue with YouTube is that it takes a while for us to edit and get content out for you guys as fast as possible. That's why whenever our challenger players discover new tech, broken builds, or game-winning strategies, they post it immediately in our new meta updates course, weeks before you'll ever see it on YouTube, Reddit, or TikTok, so you can get ahead of everyone else. For instance, AP Vera's top lane was broken from the very first patch of the season, but the average player didn't discover that until a few weeks later, while SkillCapped subscribers were notified before everyone else. As a SkillCapped subscriber, you're also getting access to our newly updated Essentials courses, covering everything you need to master Season 16, from fundamentals to advanced macro, or even our Bronze to Diamond series, where we document hard-stuck players using only our content to climb through every rank. And if that wasn't enough already, every single week our challenger players upload 10 full game commentaries breaking down exactly how to carry games on your chosen champion in your elo, explaining every decision in real time. Best of all, you can get access to all of this and more completely risk-free, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount completely risk-free today. So with Kayle and Gwen both nerfed for this patch, the upper echelon in top lane shifts a bit as Shen will be joining the top 3. Shen is a really interesting top lane champ for Season 16 because there's so many different things you can do on a macro scale to impact games. Since you now gain access to teleport on quest completion, you most definitely want to be taking Ignite on Shen. Ignite Shen players are winning a whole 3% more than teleport players, with a near identical pick rate split at 50% for both secondary summoners, so definitely roll with Ignite. Something else extremely underrated on Shen right now is his core build that consists of Titanic Hydra into Dusk and Dawn. We'll go into more detail about this setup in our OP builds video tomorrow, but basically the TLDR is that the burst power is absolutely insane because of how Dusk and Dawn interacts with Shen's Q and Titanic Hydra's passive. As we can see in this clip, you are able to take a squishy ADC's health bar down below 25% before they can even exit your taunt, so the solo carry power of this build is incredible. The dueling thread in the side lane with this build is top tier, and your ability to shove out sides and pressure towers is amazing. Matchup wise for Shen, it's just AP bruisers that are going to give him a bit more trouble, so Mordekaiser is always a good ban, and with Gwen nerfed for this patch, it's going to help out Shen a bit. Avoiding any nerfs for this patch and back in the top 3 for top lane is going to be Ornn. So Ornn is without a doubt the best tank that you can play right now, and one of the best champs in general. Season 16 has been great for Ornn, as the bonus experience he gets from the top lane quest accelerates him into his level 13 faster to where he can begin to upgrade items. Each item upgrade is worth 1,000 gold worth of stats, so it's basically as if your teammate had 3 more kills than they actually do when you upgrade their item. Ornn is just an all-around really consistently powerful champion because he doesn't have a glaring weak point to his game. Laning is solid, teamfight is incredible, and even his solo kill threat if he gets ahead is amazing for a tank. The only matchup you may want to consider banning when picking Ornn is Fiora. Fiora's W combined with her true damage make it a lot harder for Ornn to succeed in the matchup unless you really outplay the Fiora, so you can't go wrong with banning her. The optimal build for Ornn revolves around a Sunfire or Hollow Radiance Rush into Thornmail or Unending Despair second, while it's very situational from then on out as you're just building whichever tank items counter the enemy's biggest threats. A new addition to the top lane solo carry list who we simply cannot ignore any longer is Singed. What's so crazy about Singed right now is that he's one of the few top lane champs who finds as much success in the higher elos as he does in low elo. There's no power skew depending on the rank the champ is played in, which makes him one of the best picks to climb with right now, regardless of rank, as he's up around a 53% win rate in bronze and in master tier. Singed has been a pretty sleeper champ for a while now, but the new item Protoplasm Harness has provided him with even more strength this year. Singed is one of the few champs who likes to build Protoplasm as a core purchase, as you grab it third. The item synergizes so well with Singed for a few different reasons. First off is that the heal from the Protoplasm passive scales off of your resists, and because Singed R amplifies his resist, he's able to gain more value from the Protoplasm passive. Second is that when the Protoplasm passive activates, it provides Singed with increased movement speed and tenacity, which are incredible stats for a champion who lacks a gap closer. If you have your Ghost and R popped combined with the Protoplasm passive popped, then the amount of movement speed you'll have in a skirmish will make you incredibly difficult to single out and kill. You want to make sure that for your 4th item you build Jockshow, because what Jockshow passive does is it increases your bonus resist by 30%, and this then gives a massive heal for your Protoplasm passive. So Liandry's Rush into Rylai's 2nd, Protoplasm 3rd, and Jockshow 4th is the core build, providing Singed with a godly amount of power for Season 16. What's even better for Singed in 26.4 is that his worst analytical matchup is getting nerfed, as Singed was only winning 47% of the time into Kayle during 26.3, so with Kayle losing losing damage on Q, that matchup gets a bit easier. Ranged top laners are generally the ones who will give you the most issues when playing Singed, so banning out Kennen or Teemo is good value. The jungle meta has seen a huge shift over the past patch, with Echo and Diana being dethroned, and Briar has moved up into the top 3. So Briar got directly buffed last patch and ended up gaining a significant amount of power from the changes, with her win rate jumping 3%. Briar's base stats were buffed, and the health cost to use her abilities were lowered, so changes that are consistently impactful in every game you play. Briar is one of those champs to where if your base stats are high enough, then she's just going to be really strong for solo queue because of how stat checky of a champion she is. It doesn't really take a whole lot of skill to succeed with Briar once you get used to her W mechanic, as the majority of her DPS is all point and click. There are so many different build variations for Briar right now, which makes her really fun to play. The most popular build consists of a Blade of the Ruined King Rush into Black Cleaver 2nd and Death's Dance 3rd. However, the best performing build for solo queue has Briar taking Endless Hunger. Endless Hunger as a 3rd item on Briar is really underrated right now, so if the enemy comp is super heavy AD, then you can still grab Death's Dance, but if they are more mixed damage or heavier AP, then Endless Hunger value shoots up. You can also swap out Blade of the Ruined King for Titanic Hydra if you are against a more squishy enemy comp where the % health damage from Blade won't be as necessary. Usually squishy champs are more bursty as well, so having the additional health from Titanic is great to absorb their initial barrage. Briar hates playing into champions who have strong peel power who can nullify her skirmish strength, so banning out Lulu or Braum is good value right now. Fresh off some buffs in 26.3 and making his way into the top 3 for jungle is Xin Zhao. So much like Briar, Xin Zhao's buffs from last patch have catapulted him up the priority list for jungle, as he's now a top tier pick for solo queue. Xin gained more healing on his passive and more attack speed on E, so both changes that are incredibly impactful when skirmishing with the champion. Something that's really underrated for this season on a bunch of junglers is taking Scorch Claw instead of Gust Walker for your jungle starting item, or in other words, the red item instead of the blue one. Red jungle starting item gained relative value for this year because when you complete your jungle quest, you now gain bonus movement speed, so the movement speed from Gust Walker is no longer as important. You can instead go Scorch Claw and just output more DPS while still being very mobile because of the quest reward granting movement speed. So on both Xin Zhao and Briar, we would recommend that you run the red starting item instead of the blue one if you haven't been already, as only about 28% of Briar players are taking it and about 29% of Xin players. In regards to the build for Xin Zhao, you will be rushing Sundered Sky into Black Cleaver 2nd, and then 3rd item is pretty situational, with Death's Dance, Sterix, and Ma all being viable pickups. Ban-wise, when picking Xin Zhao, you can never go wrong with getting rid of a meta support with strong peel power who can hurt your skirmish potential, so Braum or Lulu are 2 great options right now. And then to round out the top 3 for the jungle, back for a 2nd patch in a row is going to be Kha'Zix. So Kha'Zix, without a doubt, the best assassin jungler for solo queue right now. His synergy with a bunch of the new items for Season 16 is amazing, as he loves the reworked Umbral Glaive and is dominating with Bastion Breaker. Your Umbral Glaive spike is just so massive because the 1v1 potential you have on item completion due to the Umbral Glaive passive is just gross. The fact that you get a true damage proc that refreshes every time you use your R gives Kha'Zix a nearly unbeatable skirmish if he has the item advantage. So farming efficiently and hitting your Umbral Glaive spike as soon as possible is a really effective win condition to play for on Kha'Zix right now. Once you get your Umbral Glaive, you should be looking to play around whichever side of the map is performing the best and try to force fights with them. Matchup wise for Ka, of all the junglers in meta, the Rengar matchup is the one that Ka players are losing to the most right now, so he's a good ban to consider if you aren't super familiar with the matchup. A new addition to the mid lane top 3 for 26.4 coming off of a buff from last patch is Ahri. So the Ahri W buff actually ended up landing more power positive than expected, which has pushed her up to being one of the best mids in the game. Ahri is now the most picked mid lane champion by a long shot, along with having a super high win rate, so without question an OP solo queue champ right now. We're even seeing a few champions who are around her power level getting nerfed for this patch, with Kassadin and Naafiri dropping down, so the separation gets even larger for Ahri being the best mid. What's so great about Ahri is that she never really has any truly terrible matchups in solo queue. Usually most mid lane champs have that one matchup where they win only 47% of the time against, but Ahri doesn't have a single one of those. One matchup that can be more volatile that's worth a ban if you aren't super familiar with it is Yasuo, as his wind wall and mobility can do a good job at outplaying Ahri's skill shot reliance. The meta build for Ahri revolves around a Malignance Rush into Shadowflame 2nd and Zanya's or Rabadon's 3rd, while nothing beats Electrocute for Ahri's Keystone Rune. One mid lane champ who's severely underrated for Season 16, who we're featuring in the top 3 for this patch, is Sion. So there are a few reasons Sion mid has been absolutely dominating as a mid laner this year. The first is that the tier 3 boots upgrade for the defensive boots are incredibly powerful. The thing is though that most mid lane champs don't really want to go the defensive boots route. It's generally tanks or bruisers that will be grabbing defensive boots, but you just don't see those archetypes played very much in the mid lane. So by taking Sion mid, you get to either run steel caps or merc treads and become extremely tanky. The second reason reason Scion mid works insanely well for this season is his ability to side lane in the mid game. With Scion R, it makes splitting with him a lot less risky than for most champs because he can escape way easier if he gets collapsed on and waste the enemy's time while your team capitalizes across the map. Since there were more tower plates added for this year, applying pressure through sides if done correctly is very rewarding, which makes Scion in general a really solid champ. And then just being able to roam with his R to help out bot or top once you get level 6 is massive for Season 16 because bot and top are way more snowbally with the role quest rewards, so getting them ahead is super valuable. The build you'll want to take on Scion consists of a Hollow Radiance or Sunfire Aegis Rush into Unending Despair second, and it's really situational from then on out. Another massive perk to Scion mid is that he doesn't have any terrible matchups. With his W Shield, Doran's Shield as his starting item, and Second Wind in runes, it's really hard for most meta mid laners to bully him out of lane. Yone is the one matchup worth a ban when picking Scion, as his consistent DPS is the one thing that Scion can struggle more against. And then to round out the top 3 for mid lane and back for a second patch in a row is Twisted Fate. So TF is pretty underrated right now as he's got a new build that's still flying under the radar. We featured this setup in our OP builds video last patch as it consists of taking Gunblade as your rush item. The thing about Gunblade on Twisted Fate is that he can take advantage of both the AP and AD that the item provides, while the active slow amplifies his early game catch power. The active slow from Gunblade has a range of 700, while Twisted Fate's auto attack range is only 525. So by running Gunblade, it's basically like TF has an auto range of 700 because as long as you're in range to land the Gunblade slow, your gold card will be guaranteed to follow unless the enemy dashes away. It's definitely a more solo carry oriented setup as you have more kill threat throughout the early to mid game. However, the trade-off is that you're more squishy compared to Rod of Ages. So by no means is Rod of Ages bad, as you can still run it if the enemy team is very burst heavy and you'd rather the defensive aspects of Rod, but in a game where the enemy team lacks a ton of burst, Gunblade can work amazing. Hitting your core items on Twisted Fate is so key because each one provides a very unique spike. Lichbane gives you a huge DPS burst, while Fire Cannon gives you that additional catch power, so by taking cash back in runes, it allows you to accelerate into those key spikes faster, which makes Twisted Fate a lot more consistent. Ban-wise, when picking TF, Ahri in general is one of the best bans for this patch, as Twisted Fate players have been only winning 48% of the time in the matchup, but other than Ahri, an assassin like Fizz, who has a lot of mobility and can dodge your gold card, is another matchup you'll want to try and avoid. So with Jinx and Twitch both getting nerfed for this patch, next in line to move up into the top 3 is Miss Fortune. So Miss Fortune is just all around a really great ADC for this season, as she's one of the rare ADCs who builds lethality, and because of the role quest for Season 16, lethality on ADCs has become better. Lethality as a stat is more powerful earlier on in the game, so with the bonus gold you get from the role quest, you're able to hit your lethality items faster, which is massive. On top of the role quest reward, you'll also grab First Strike as the keystone combined with cashback and runes on Miss Fortune, and everything combined just lets MF hit her Ghost Blade into the collector spike way earlier on in the game compared to previous seasons. You can still opt for the Bloodthirster Rush setup, but we do think lethality is better for this season because of the fact that you can accelerate into the items much faster. Ban-wise for Miss Fortune, you really can't go wrong with banning out whichever meta dive champ is being picked the most, so right now either Zed or Akali are two good options. So we don't usually feature mages when covering the best bot lane carries, but they're just too strong to ignore right now as we've got Veigar joining the top 3. Veigar as a bot lane carry currently has the highest win rate for any champion in the entire game in ranks Plat and below. So why is this the case? Well, mages bot lane have actually been quite strong for a while, even dating back to last season, as they got a much easier lane when played bot as opposed to mid, since traditional ADCs have a hard time matching them early on. Veigar tends to have a pretty weak early game when played mid, but if you send him down bot, then he just gets to stack Q for free in the majority of matchups. What's made mages even more disgusting for Season 16 though is the role quest. Mage itemization is already quite cheap relative to ADC itemization, so what this means is that because the role quest is giving you a ton of bonus gold, you're hitting your 3-item core super early on in the game. Couple this with taking cashback in runes and more tower plating gold across the map, and Veigar is able to complete his 3-item core of Luden's, Storm Surge, and Rabadon's way more consistently, whereas in previous seasons, getting to this core wouldn't be as likely. And then on top of this, you have the additional item slot as one of your quest rewards, and with Veigar in specific, this can be so disgusting, because after building 4 damage items, he really doesn't need any more, and he can round out his build with a few tank items. So for example, you could rush Luden's, go into Storm Surge 2nd, Rabadon's 3rd, Void Staff 4th, and then 5th item could be Randuin's Omen, 6th item could be Deadman's Plate, and 7th item could be Jockshow. So if games go late with bot lane Veigar, then you just become this burst tank, which is really weird to say, but it's literally what he is. Matchup wise, when picking Veigar, he doesn't want to play into champions who have strong early kill threat, so banning out Karma or Nami is good value. And then to round out the top 3 for ADC in 26.4, we've got Jinx. So Jinx is receiving a small nerf to her armor armor growth being lowered from 4.7 to 4.2, but this won't bring her down in power very much at all. Hex Optic C44 is even getting buffed for this patch, with the range amplifier on takedowns being increased from 6 to 8 seconds, so it's a small indirect buff to help compensate for that nerf. Hex Optics is also getting buffed so that the passive range required for max damage amp is going down from 600 to 500, so this means when Jinx is using her minigun form, she will be able to benefit from the Hex Optics bonus damage now. Jinx builds are actually really interesting right now because Hex Optics is finally getting a bit of play as a rush item on Jinx, and it's winning more than anything else. Whether rushing Hex Optics is optimal or not is hard to say though, because the sample size of the item in the rush slot is pretty low, with only 42,000 games as opposed to 625,000 games of Yuntal. It's definitely something worth trying for this patch though, especially with Hex Optics becoming even stronger as it was outperforming even prior to these buffs. Hex Optics Rush into Phantom Dancer second and then Infinity Edge third is the new core that's performing very well. Definitely continue taking Inspiration secondary on Jinx even after the cashback and triple tonic nerfs. We noted in one of our previous videos how we thought there was a chance that Sorcery could come back as the more optimal secondary page on Jinx, but the nerfs to cashback and triple tonic landed super light, so there's no reason to swap off the page. Similar to Misfortune, the main weakness of Jinx is super heavy dive since she lacks a gap closer, so you can never go wrong with banning a meta dive champ like Zed or Akali. So kicking off the support top 3 for this patch is going to be a champion who's absolutely excelling in every metric possible, as we've got Nami. So not only is Nami the most played support in the game right now, but she has a top 5 win rate, which really shouldn't ever happen. If a champion is being picked at that high of a rate, then it should in theory lead to a lower win rate due to more average players picking the champ and bringing the win rate down. But since that's not the case here, it just goes to show how insanely powerful Nami is. Nami is just a really solid blind pick support because her laning phase is great and she doesn't have any specific support matchups that hard counter her. Engaged supports are always going to be lanes that are more volatile, but they can actually be Nami favored if you're pushing for the level 2 and can hit that spike before your opponent. This is really key on Nami when you're up against a melee support, as you want to help your ADC thin the wave so that you can ensure you're hitting 2 first. If an enemy Nautilus, Thresh, or Leona hits 2 before you, then that's where things can get dicey. But if you're autoing the wave to thin it out and providing pressure at level 1, then in most lanes you should be hitting 2 before your opponent. Ban-wise for Nami, Blitzcrank is always a good option because even if you play near perfect in lane, just one misstep can cost yourself the entire lane. The best core build for Nami in 26.4 revolves around an Imperial Mandate Rush into Echoes of Helia second, while Solstice Slay is the item upgrade, and then you'll grab Aerie for the Keystone Rune. With Braum now nerfed for a second patch in a row, a melee support who was right in behind Braum last patch, who should overtake him in 26.4, is Maokai. So Maokai just got buffed in 26.3, receiving more damage on his Q, and the buff ended up adding around 1.5% win rate, which is actually quite significant. Analytically, Maokai is now outperforming all other melee supports, and he's just a really good champ to consider for solo queue because of how simple it is to be effective on him. You can literally first time Maokai support and make a great impact on games because of how useful his point and click crowd control is. There aren't any crazy combos you've got to learn on the pick, as W into Q knockback is super simple to execute. With dragon stacking becoming a really big win condition in Season 16, it gives even more incentive to pick Maokai because it's impossible for enemies to dodge his R if they are trying to contest a dragon and need to run through the river. There are 2 supports you really want to try and avoid playing into when picking Maokai, being Morgana and Braum. Both champs really limit the engaged strength of Maokai, so banning either one is good value. Core build for Maokai is going to consist of a Bandle Pipes Rush into Trailblazer second, while Solstice Slay is the item upgrade, and then you'll grab Aftershock for the Keystone Rune. A mainstay in the support top 3 to start the year who avoids nerfs for another patch is Sona. So Sona is right up there with Nami in terms of enchanter priority right now, as she's so powerful with the Season 16 support item changes. Echoes of Helia into Whispering Circlet is providing Sona with so much strength, as the amount of consistent healing she's able to dish out once those items are completed is incredible. What's so great about Sona is that she has that very clear win condition that you're playing for in each game. Hit her 2-item core and the champion can just solo win games by existing in a team fight and pressing her W. At the same time though, what really pushes Sona over the top is the fact that she can actually make plays better than most enchanters. You always have the threat of your R, which you can use to find catch plays, so you don't need to rely on your teammates to make plays for you. In order to reach your 2-item spike, you will want to avoid playing into more volatile lanes where you can get picked off, so banning Thresh or Leona is good value. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So that's gonna wrap everything up for our 26.4 edition of the best solo carries. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.